What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Debate Mates. I am Matthew Swanenberg, and today we are finishing up with the Eastern Conference reasons to be optimistic for every NBA team as we head into the 2025-2026 NBA season. This is part 3 of a 6-part series where, like I said, I'm just going to be saying one reason why every NBA team should be optimistic as we head into this new season. Like I said in the first video, this is one of the most exciting times to be an NBA fan as we enter a new season, because I could tell you today that the Orlando Magic go 82-0, and that's probably far-fetched, but you can't tell me I'm wrong. There's so many reasons to be optimistic for every NBA team, and like I said, I'm just going to dive into that today. If you missed Monday's video, that was 5 reasons to be optimistic for every NBA team in the Atlantic Division in the Eastern Conference, so the Celtics, the Knicks, the Nets, the 76ers, and the Raptors. And yesterday on Tuesday, I discussed reasons to be optimistic for every team in the Central Division: Bulls, Bucks, Pacers, Pistons, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. So like I said, today we'll be finishing up in the Eastern Conference with the Southeast Division. And without further ado, I'm going to just hop right into it. We're going to start with the Orlando Magic. The Magic finished only 41-41 last year, which is kind of shocking because they were sort of a sleeper 50-win team last year. A lot of people thought they could be on a progression similar to the Oklahoma City Thunder, where they sort of marginally improved, and then all of a sudden they had this drastic jump with Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner continuing to develop, and injuries hampered a lot of that growth last year. And another thing that hampered that growth was the offense. They had the 29th best offense, or second worst offense, in the league last season. So I'm optimistic for the Magic because even with all those injuries, even with that lackluster offense, they were still a 41-41 team, and they added so much shooting in this offseason and just so much depth. Desmond Bane is possibly the biggest move of the offseason. I know guys like Kevin Durant got shuffled around, and that's the biggest name that got moved in the offseason. And then there was like Cooper Flagg getting drafted, things like that. And then you have these fringe moves that are going to really push contenders over the top. But Desmond Bane might have been the biggest, most consequential move in the offseason, to be honest. And I love Kevin Durant. He's my favorite player of all time. But adding that shooting to this Orlando Magic team, a team that has really been just one or two shooters away for a long time. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope didn't work out last season. Desmond Bane has proven to be not only a more consistent shooter, but just a more consistent player. He's a good playmaker. He's really, really good at pushing the ball in transition. And that shooting is just going to take this team to another level. He is a bona fide tertiary star. He's a bona fide all-star type of guy, and he's going to be a guy that really elevates this offense. He's 18 points per game on 41% from three over the course of his career, and it gives Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner the opportunity to get off the ball a little bit more. It gives them another creator, and it gives them another guy that they can create for, and it gives them more space to operate. Banchero is going to be getting doubled again this year, and instead of kicking out to, like I said, KCP, who had a close to career worst year last year, he's going to be kicking to Desmond Bane, who's also really talented at attacking closeouts. So Bane gives them an incredibly talented third option. He's going to be one of the better third options in the entire NBA, and I'm really excited to see what he looks like, what his shooting looks like on this team. A team that is already really talented defensively. The defense isn't going to fall off at all, and the offense should go up a couple of ticks with Bane added into the mix. Aside from Desmond Bane, like I said, they added some other depth pieces, some other good shooters. Tyus Jones is a career 41% shooter from three. He's a stabilizing force in the backcourt, a guy who's not going to turn the ball over, a great distributor, and he kind of gives room for a guy like Jalen Suggs and Anthony Black to continue to develop. Anthony Black's development has been a little stagnant since he's been in the league. He increased his productivity a little bit last year, but still hasn't sort of reached that ceiling that I think people were hoping that he could reach. Tyus Jones gives him a little bit of a stopgap and a guy they can come to off of the bench who can produce, who will be consistent. And the Magic have been so riddled with injuries the last few years. Like I mentioned, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Jalen Suggs, their three best players last year, all missed significant time with injuries. Desmond Bane is going to mask some holes if one or two of those forward guys go out, in Banchero and Wagner. And Tyus Jones is going to be able to mask some holes if Suggs misses time. Obviously, those three big guys, Suggs, Banchero, and Wagner, are going to be the ones that are the reason that they can win 50-ish games, 45 to 50 games this season, with Bane, of course, being a big part in that as well. But just having some extra depth. And Jace Richardson, a guy they got in the draft this past season, he was shot 41% from three in the summer league. He's looked really good in preseason. Magic fans and Magic coaching staff are really high on him and think that he's going to be a guy who makes an immediate impact as a sixth-man bucket getter type of guy. So just another scorer, another shooter, another guy who stretches the floor. They had Cole Anthony last year was sort of their main off-the-bench piece, along with Gary Harris, and both of those guys are inconsistent. They're fringe rotation guys. You replace them with, like I said, Bane, Tyus Jones, and Jason Richardson. All three of them are either low end or all star level rotation pieces. So I'm really excited to see what this team looks like with hopefully also a healthy Franz and Suggs. I said they missed a lot of time this last year. They were 33 and 27 with Franz. They finished 41 and 41. And they were 20 and 15 with Jalen Suggs when they were healthy. So obviously a lot of missed time between the two of them. Hopefully they can stay healthy for a full season. And with that added shooting around them with Desmond Bane, a tertiary star, an all-star type of guy, this is going to be a really dangerous team. This is probably the team that slides into the 3 spot in the Eastern Conference, right behind the Knicks and right behind the Cavaliers. I'll get into that more, and I'll sort of dissect why I think these teams will fall where they will when I get into my preseason rankings or my right before the season playoff standings and record predictions. I'm going to run back what I did last year, where I try to see if I can go 30 for 30 and predict every team's record will be at the end of the season. But yeah, I'm going to tip my hand a bit and say I think the Magic are the third best team in the Eastern Conference, and I'm super optimistic for this offense with Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones and Jace Richardson now helping out with the two superstar forwards. So moving on to the Atlanta Hawks, another team who saw great growth this offseason. The Hawks maybe are the winners of the offseason when you look beyond just one move. The Hawks made a lot of great moves. They brought in Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They brought in Luke Kennard. And the biggest move, obviously, is bringing in Kristaps Porzingis. So my reason for optimism is just tied to those three names. This is the deepest a Trae Young team has ever been. This is the most talented a Trae Young-led Atlanta Hawks team has ever been. And we've seen Trae Young and be able to lead his team to an Eastern Conference Finals before. They made one conference finals. They had a magical run a few years ago when the Bucks won the championship. And this team is far more talented and plays in a weaker Eastern Conference. So it's not impossible to see this team having a path to making another deep playoff run led by Trae Young. Like I said, this team is super deep. They're super talented. Dyson Daniels had a most improved player type of season last year and was, of course, one of the best defensive players in the league, one of the greatest defensive seasons we've seen from a guard in a really long time. He continues to be there as a secondary ball handler to assist Trae Young. Jalen Johnson was playing at an all-star level before his injury. He was averaging 19 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists last season when he was healthy. A lot of their success is contingent upon him. When he goes down, the team completely changes. He gives Trae Young a great secondary ball handler, a great pick and roll threat, a great lob threat, and just some great athleticism that they desperately need at that wing position. And even when he does get hurt, or if he does get hurt, Zachary Reese-Sachet, I think, can continue to come into his own in this league. He was 41% from three in Eurobasket and averaged 15 points on 40% shooting and 41% from three after the All-Star break. So he's continuing to come into his own. We already know the defense is going to be there for him. It's just sort of proving if he is a fringe starting lineup guy, or if he is a bona fide number 5 in a starting lineup in a starting rotation. I think he can be a bona fide number 5 guy, a bona fide number 4 guy in a starting lineup. I think he has a good year this year. I think he continues to improve. And like I said, Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, Luke Kennard, Kristaps Porzingis, and Onyeka Okongwu, not a new acquisition, but a guy who's continued to come into his own in this league. Averaged 13 and 9 last season with the Hawks and could play some starting 5 next to Porzingis if they want to try to keep Porzingis' health at the front of their minds. Could also come off the bench depending on matchups. So he just gives the Hawks some added flexibility. Kristaps Porzingis is healthy coming into this season. He had this strange mystery illness last year, and he says that he's completely over it. So looking forward to seeing a healthy Porzingis alongside Trae Young. Then it'd be a lot of pick and pops, a lot of open threes, a lot of deep threes. Kristaps Porzingis spaces the floor in an insane way. The way he can shoot from so deep, he makes centers go out to spaces that they are really uncomfortable to guard. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity for him with Trae Young setting him up, with Jalen Johnson on the wings, with Luke Kennard on the wings, with Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels and Zachary Reese-Sachet and all of these guys who can shoot, who can bring it off the dribble. It's going to be a really talented team, a really deep team, and I'm really excited to see where they end up fitting in the Eastern Conference, because after your top 3, if you've got the Hawks and you've kind of got the Pistons as that 4-5, the Hawks are really, really a strong threat to make it out of that play-in tournament where they've been recently and be a team that potentially hosts a playoff series. And like I said, this is a team that I think has a really high ceiling come playoff time because of how deep they are, because of the defenders they have. So I could see this team making a pretty good run. They also have Asa Newell and Mo Gay as some extra bench depth pieces. Asa Newell was a high draft pick out of University of Georgia this past draft, and Mo Gay has shown a lot of promise in the G League. So these are two more front court options. They just have options this year, and that's something they sort of haven't had in the past. They have NBA ready options, And I'm a big fan of Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think he's one of the bigger misses that a team's going to have this coming season. I think the Timberwolves are really going to miss his defense, his ball handling, his shooting. He was really clutch. He guards SGA really well, which isn't going to be as helpful in Atlanta as it was in Minnesota. But he's just a great defender, a gritty player, and he's going to pair perfectly next to Trae Young, as will Dyson Daniels. This is a team that masks all of Trae Young's weaknesses and enhances all of his strengths. So this is a great team. And if I'm a Hawks fan, if I am the Hawks, I'm optimistic because of this added depth and because of this being the best roster that Trae Young has ever had in his career. Not to mention they are coached by Quinn Snyder, one of the better regular season coaches in the entire NBA over the last decade and a half. So a lot of reasons to be optimistic for this squad coming into the season. Moving on, we've got the Miami Heat. The Heat are in a weird spot, but I'm optimistic for the Heat because they have some young guys this year that could actually hit. They drafted Kasparis Jakučionis out of Illinois, who had a really good summer league. He averaged 15 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. Aside from him, they have Kel'el Ware. Their defense with Kel'el Ware last year playing significant minutes. They averaged opponents averaged 10 points less per game with Kel'el Ware on the court. He is a defensive game wrecker, and he'll look great continuing to grow next to Bam Adebayo. He had a really good post All-Star break. He was working his way into Rookie of the Year conversations. There was a weak rookie class, but he also had a really hot stretch where he was shooting the three ball well and just looked like an athletic freak on the court, which he is. He is an athletic freak, someone who's sort of similar in body type and in ability or athletic ability to like a Victor Wembanyama, a guy. It doesn't look normal the way he's able to move, the way he's able to guard. So I'm excited to see his continued growth. And then Nikola Jovic is a guy who I think we've all been waiting on to hit for a couple of years now. And the Heat are going to give him an added role this year. They're going to let him get the ball a little bit more, especially with Hero being injured to come into the season. Jovic expects to start and expects to be featured more on offense. So I'm excited to see how those three guys can play together. I'm excited to see if one of those three guys can hit. The Heat have been in a weird place the last couple of years. They're not good enough to contend, but they're too good to try to rebuild. So they haven't really been able to get that superstar, top of the draft type of guy yet. One of these three people, perhaps you could see turning into that franchise cornerstone, whether it is a Jakučionis, a Kel'el Ware, or a Nikola Jovic. If you aren't optimistic about any of those three guys, though, and you're a Heat fan who says, no, we're going to compete this year, no, we're going to take advantage of this weak Eastern Conference, then I'm a fan of Norman Powell being on the roster. He fills a big gap until Tyler Hero gets healthy. He's got foot surgery over the offseason. And the Heat were 14-28 in the clutch last season. They finished 37-45 at all. So you have to chalk a lot of that up to bad luck. They have Eric Spoelstra, one of the best coaches in the league, so I don't think it's a coaching or a physical ability problem. It's just sort of a luck thing at that rate, I think. And a lot of that's going to have to turn around this year. I would assume it will. They're not going to be that bad in the clutch 2 years in a row. So I see this team improving a little bit with Norm Powell having the reins until Tyler Hero is healthy, a full season with Andrew Wiggins. So I don't know if I'd say I'm excited for this team, but I am optimistic about the growth of some of these young guys and optimistic to see Norm Powell, Tyler Hero, when they get to play together, gives them two good clutch options, two good ball handlers. And then you got, like I said, Kel'el Ware, Jakučionis, and Nikola Jovic. Anything they can get from them is kind of found money, and I think one of those three guys could really pop. And if I'm a Heat fan, I'm really hoping that they do. Moving on to the Charlotte Hornets. So with the Hornets, again, a team with not a whole lot to be optimistic for. A lot of the worst teams in the East, or a lot of the worst teams in the league reside in the East. The Hornets are one of them. But with the Hornets, I'm going to say that the floor is higher than it's been in the past. The floor in the past has been worst team in the NBA, worst team in the league, laughing stock of the league. And this year, I don't think the Hornets are going to be in that conversation. I still think they're going to be bad, but if I'm a Hornets fan, I'm at least optimistic about the fact that this roster is sort of starting to fill out and starting to make a little bit more sense. They got Con Knipple in the draft, picked him with the 4th overall pick. The Hornets were the 28th best team in the league last year when it came to shooting three-pointers. Con Knipple is a sharpshooter. That's what he's been drafted to do. That's what he's done his whole life. So having him get open shots next to LaMelo Ball and slashers like Brandon Miller should be a big boost for this offense, an offense that has really struggled in recent years. They drafted Ryan Kalkbrenner, Liam McNeely, and Sion James, who all had good summer leagues. They're all Bulldogs. They're all good defensive players. So they also bring some just culture and some defense, some attitude to a Hornets team that has lacked that. Charles Lee is a good culture coach coming over from the Celtics, a team that preaches defense, that teaches defense. So I'm excited to see if they can continue to grow on that end and sort of mask the deficiencies that LaMelo Ball has on that end of the floor. LaMelo Ball, of course, is an electric scorer and player and highlight factory when he is healthy, and hopefully he can be healthy coming into this season, although I don't think anybody would be counting on that. Aside from LaMelo Ball, they added Colin Sexton. They added Spencer Dinwiddie. They added Mason Plumlee, the Plum Dog Millionaire, of course, and Pat Connaughton. So again, just a team that added some NBA players. Spencer Dinwiddie can play in the NBA. Colin Sexton is a solid NBA player. The Plum Dog is an NBA player. Pat Connaughton is an NBA player. So starting to fill out this roster with guys that can really play a little bit, guys that you're not scared to have on the court, guys that you kind of know what you're going to get. And then they have minor insurance for the LaMelo Ball injury by signing Dinwiddie and by signing Colin Sexton. If LaMelo Ball goes out for an extended period of time, they have point guards and they have guards that can sort of take over. And of course, they can't match the impact of LaMelo Ball. They're not going to be able to match that production, but they're going to be able to make it a little bit less torturous for Hornets fans to watch, I think. So the floor is a lot lower, or is a lot higher than it used to be. This is no longer a 18 win team. I don't think they're probably closer to 25. Maybe in a great year you get up to 27, 30. So if I'm a Hornets fan, I'm just optimistic that I think rock bottom is behind them, and I think the way up is kind of starting to become a little bit clearer now with the roster filling out with some either legitimate NBA players or some rookies that fit the system that the Hornets seem to be trying to adopt. Finally, we've got a team that is at the bottom of the East of the league and has been for a few years, and that'll be the Washington Wizards. If I'm a Wizards fan, or if I am the Wizards, I'm optimistic simply because the roster that is starting the season is not the roster that you'll be finishing the season with, and they're starting the roster of the season with Chris Middleton on the roster and with CJ McCollum, with Corey Kispert. I assume those three guys are all going to have some trade value come January, come February, and December. They're guys who are more impactful. They deserve to be on a team that's not the Wizards, and they're guys that contenders or fringe teams I think are going to want to go after. So that gives you an opportunity to get some bench pieces back for them, or not bench pieces, some young pieces back for them, some draft picks. Gives the Wizards the opportunity to continue to try to stockpile picks and stockpile just young players, more bites at the apple. That's what they need, is just more bites at the apple, because Sarr hasn't hit yet, Bub Carrington hasn't hit yet, Bilal Coulibaly hasn't hit yet. So they have a lot of guys that they're just kind of waiting for it to hit. And until one of them does, you need to keep trading these vets. You need to keep trading these guys that they have on the roster that don't really fit the timeline, so you can get someone that does. Trey Johnson, I think there's hope that he fits, he can hit, and Cam Whitmore as well. These are two guys who are heralded as really good scorers, and they're going to have an opportunity to score on a Wizards team that, like I said, still has a void with whoever that top bucket getter is going to be. Both of those guys could project to be the top scorer for the Wizards, especially once Middleton and once McCollum are gone. So if I'm a Wizards fan, there are some young pieces that you can get a little excited for. Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly, Alex Sarr, like I said, and then they just drafted Trey Johnson, traded for Cam Whitmore, a guy who a lot of fans have been high on ever since he got drafted a few years ago, and even before he got drafted, people thought he could be a real needle mover in the league. So the Wizards do have young talent. They have the potential where a couple of these guys could hit and really make all the difference in the world for this franchise. But even until one of those guys does hit, or if a guy does hit, they have players, Middleton, McCollum, and Kispert, that they can trade, that they can try to move to try to get assets, draft picks, and continue to stockpile to the future, so they can eventually find one of those guys that will hit, that will be a franchise cornerstone. So the Wizards have a lot of flexibility. They have a lot of moves to make, and if I'm a Wizards fan, I'm optimistic for that reason. So there you have it. That is one reason why I'm optimistic for every team in the NBA's Southeastern Division. Next video is going to be something a little bit different, something a little bit creative. We're going to be talking about the NBA, and we're going to be talking about some superheroes. So I'm excited to talk about that with you guys, and then we're going to be coming back with our reasons to be optimistic for every team in the NBA's Western Conference. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.